Okay. We're not having the intro this time. Huh? Well, it appears as though I'm waiting for an intro that's not happening, so we'll just bull right through. Uh, Welcome to A Walk Through Shadows. I'm your host, Charlie Romans, and as always, my wonderful co host, Samantha Romans. And we're going to be your guides as we walk through the shadows. Now, sometimes those shadows are in the present day and near, and sometimes the shadows are deep in the past, and the older shadows cast the longer fingers into our modern lives. So today we are going to talk about invasive spirits. Now, not I don't want to confuse this with anything like possession or any sort of nefarious infernal entities, but there's a very old legend that involves what they call the walk-in. Now, as we've done before, I'm going to uh, read some stories and we'll discuss which ones are real, which ones are fabricated, and hopefully have some insight into the ramifications and why people believe these things. Okay. A walk in spirit generally refers to a new soul taking over an existing human body. Unlike possession, the departing spirit wants to change places with the walk in spirit. The walk in experience is thought to happen through a pre life agreement or when the original soul wants to depart, often following a near death experience or profound trauma. One soul departs to the spiritual realm, and the other soul takes over the established life and personality, often with noticeable significant differences in attitude, taste in foods, and hobbies. In some reported cases, the two spirits may share a single body collaboratively in a situation called braiding, similar to a possession, but unlike a possession, it is for the good of the original soul instead of having an evil intent. Okay, now, first story. A little boy in India contracted smallpox and died. His breath stopped and his skin cooled. His father contacted family members to help him bury his son the next morning. A few hours later, the father noticed his son start to move. It took a few weeks, but the 3-year-old made a full recovery. During that time, the boy slept so much he rarely ate, drank, or spoke. But when he was finally healthy enough to talk, he told his family that he was someone else entirely, giving them his name, the names of his real family members, including his wife and children, and that he had died in a village none of them had heard of. His entire personality changed. He acted like an adult instead of a toddler. He even lost interest in toys and playing. He said he died when he fell on his way to a wedding, but thought he'd been poisoned first. He also said he came from a wealthy family and refused to eat the lowly food his mother prepared. He nearly starved before a neighbor started cooking for him. It was nearly a year before he would eat with his family again. When the case was researched, in fact, the name the boy had given to his family was a well known person in the village he had named. The man had died in the exact manner the child had said on the same day the little boy died of smallpox. Interesting story. More than 3 million people are classified as clinical hoarders. Okay, might sound a little off topic, but we're getting there. Uh, the former boyfriend of a lady in a hoarding situation thinks she became a hoarder because of a paranormal event. She had been hospitalized due to a car accident. Afterwards, the hoarding began. The boyfriend was allowed to use hypnosis to take her through a life regression. He reports that she was possessed or had a walk in spirit of a young boy. According to the former boyfriend, the boy spirit wanted everything he saw because before he had nothing. When the boyfriend tried to reason with the spirit, the boy became very angry and refused to respond any further. The lady's hoarding situation became better only after a long period of therapy, but never fully disappeared. Okay, now for a third story. On a sunny afternoon in Chicago, a secretary was returning after walking across the street to pick up lunch for the office. The box of sandwiches and drinks must have hindered her view because she stepped directly into the path of an oncoming car. She was severely injured and was in the intensive care unit in horrible pain for 3 weeks. Then she spent 2 additional months in rehabilitation. Her family said they noticed a change in her personality right before she was released from the ICU, but they were so relieved she was improving, they attributed the changes to the pain subsiding after returning home. The young lady had no interest in returning to the job she once loved, but she did discover she could play the piano. More on that later. While at a quarterly dinner at her church, she sat down at the piano and perfectly played several songs, shocking everyone because she'd never taken a lesson. The former secretary went on to become a very well known concert pianist, selling out venues across the United States and then around the world. During an in depth interview several years later, she was asked how she went from a secretary to world famous pianist. She thought for a moment and said, because this is the life this soul was promised. Okay, so those are three very interesting stories. Do you have any comments on these stories, Samantha?
I think it's wild. Like, so the two of them don't actually have the person dying,
Okay.
but like the little boy died, like completely, and then was taken over by another soul. I think that's kind of strange, you know?
Now, do we? It's interesting because if somebody was dead set to explain everything through science, they would stop you right there and say this is just a mental disorder or rewiring in the brain or something like that. But if you take into consideration the soul, the spirit, I was thinking about this earlier today. It's been, oh God, decades ago. They had done a study and it didn't get much traction, but I remember reading about the study. They measured at the point of death, there was an almost infinitesimal amount of mass that escaped the body.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, the researchers were saying this is the evidence of the soul leaving the body. So, I guess in a situation like this, you've got to decide, okay, what is it that makes us who we are? Is it just a collection of chemicals and neurons and bad decisions that make us who we are, or do we actually have uh, a living and possibly eternal soul? And we have a tendency to say that our thoughts are lodged in our brain
Mm-hmm.
and that our emotions are lodged in our heart.
Mm-hmm.
But it's quite possible, and it depends on who you ask and what you choose to believe, that both of those are actually lodged in that intangible thing that some people call soul.
Yeah.
Okay, now here's I'm gonna throw in my story here. Uh, Back to the whole piano thing, and I did talk to the producer here a couple of days ago, and I recounted this story to him. And the joke I made was that I didn't come back out of this being able to play the piano. I've always wanted to play the piano. It would be cool if I just suddenly could play the piano. But years ago, I think it was about 19. We won't go into any great detail on the hows or the whys, but I ended up in an ICU, and for 16 hours, according to family members and everything, for 16 hours, there was no measurable brain activity, which I guess kind of explains a lot, doesn't it? Maybe it never really completely started. Uh, and so I was telling the producer the other day, no harps and clouds, no pointed ears and horns and pitchforks. I just wasn't there for 16 hours. And I remember waking up and having tubes and stuff coming out of me. And my first comment was, where the heck am I? And my mother, obviously, who had been sitting there with me the whole time, uh, was relieved, but this is my mother we're talking about. She said, "Shut up, Charlie. There's sick people in here." I'm like, "What am I, chopped liver?" So I make the joke that possibly you've never met me. Possibly I'm not really Charlie. Maybe I am a walk-in spirit. Now the catch to this, and I discussed this with my wife numerous times, the catch is I'm too stubborn to give up. So I wouldn't voluntarily depart or shuffle off the mortal coil, but maybe that's the walk-in saying this, maybe. So it's amusing, and I had made the comment to the producer here the other day that if I had came back able to play the piano, that would have been awesome, and I would have considered that a pretty good trade-off because I love piano music. I just can't play. I have no musical talent whatsoever.
Also, you have been corrected. Your wife has said that it is actually 21 grams. Is the soul is 21 grams.
Okay, so there you go. My wife, the soul of science here, and exactness, will call me out. I have a tendency to be general, and she has a tendency to be exact. So we kind of play off each other. It works out really well. Other than the fact that I could get corrected numerous times, which is kind of inconvenient, but sort of funny if you think about it. One of the few people in my life that's actually had enough nerve to correct me. So I guess that means that it's meant to be. But so, what's your take on this, Sam? You think that all these people that are reporting these uh, after these near-death experiences, and we should clarify that this is doesn't happen every time, and it was never suggested that it happened every time. Sometimes people just dodge the bullet, or death has taken a coffee break, and they just come out of it and go on about their lives.
I mean, there's a theory that happens basically every night.
Okay.
Like when you go to sleep, you wake up a new person, but you have all the memories. So you continue on as the same person, but you're a whole different soul. So
That's
I
an
mean,
interesting take.
um, and I've talked about that. One of my friends is very obsessed with that theory, so I've talked about that a lot. Um, but I feel like if we're gonna take that into a plausibility, then why could it not be a near death experience? You get replaced.
So, that's a possibility, but it kind of, if that's the case, it's like every night that you change souls. It's kind of like being, I don't know, our bodies are just bumper cars at the county fair.
Yeah.
Whoever gets behind the wheel at that particular moment.
Well, there's also the theory that it's still your soul, but it's different versions of you, and you go through the like multiverse as yourself, but every night it's like a different version of you. Which I mean, in some of those cases that could be, a different version of you coming into your body. So maybe that version of you just, doesn't like talkies and beer. But
Possibly. Well, if that's the case, though, I want to lodge a formal complaint because there's a lot of souls lining up that make incredibly bad choices that open my eyes every morning. Send me one tomorrow that has a little bit more sense and possibly a smidgen less stubborn. But there's a possibility. I mean, the ancient people believed that once you fell asleep, that you entered the dream realm, and it was incredibly easy to get lost.
Yeah.
That's why you have so many of these legends about dream guides and things like that that help you find your way back to your body. So, I mean, the precedents are there if you want to consider it in that way.
Which I mean, that's even in a lot of um, like popular media and stuff too.
Yes.
It's like I think it's like what the Insidious movies.
Yes.
Where they can like out of body experiences, but then they have to get back to their bodies without the demons getting them. So I mean,
Well, I've been a huge consumer of, I guess, nerddom for a long time, all the way back to reading the original Doctor Strange comic books, Marvel comics. And of course, Doctor Strange's thing is astral projection and everything.
mm-hmm.
And about every third or fourth issue, he was stuck in his astral form and he was trying to get back to his body
Mm-hmm.
before the villain showed up and killed his body. And then, but that has a basis in Eastern mysticism and things like that the spirit can voluntarily leave the body and roam through the world and other planes of existence. Uh, a good take on this is, I guess you could call it a horror movie, horror science fiction, called Dreamscape with Dennis Quaid in it, and where the government is training all these people that have extrasensory perception to become basically assassins.
Mm-hmm.
And it was actually a really good movie. So if you get a chance to watch it, go ahead, please do. But fiction has a tendency to mirror the truth or what is perceived as the truth, um, along with all of the other legends and myths. People were trying to explain their existence. Matter of fact, there's a very ancient African myth about one of the mightiest warriors in the village decided that he was going to fight sleep and defeat sleep because sleep came along and stole a third of his life. And it was just a way that they used to really to understand their world. And the upshot of that story, of course, is obviously the warrior can't really confront sleep because every time he almost has him, he wakes up, and sleep is gone. Well, finally, he decides that it wasn't really hurting him, so he's just going to let it go.
See, I'm not gonna fight sleep. I've read the Russian sleep experiment. I'm not fighting sleep. I'll sleep as much as my body says to because I'm not gonna go crazy. And yeah, we're not going down that road.
Well, now psychology will tell you that once you go to sleep, well, your subconscious mind is sort of like a janitor. Okay, it goes through with its mop and its broom and everything, and it cleans out all the drains in your mind of the random input that gets stuck in there during the day. And that's why you have bizarre dreams like flying a pterodactyl through the drive through at Wendy's. So things that obviously, although would be cool if they did happen, obviously don't happen. So and your subconscious mind goes through there. But if your subconscious mind, which only really kicks in when you sleep, if it's not allowed to do its job, well, then you've got the gutters overflowing and flash flooding in your mind's living room. So it just makes all sorts of things. Mm-hmm. So, but so, what other thoughts do you have on walk-ins?
Well, going back to the story about the little boy, like I can't see why he would voluntarily give up his body to be someone else because like there must be something real good, you know, in the future for us for him to give up his life because he hadn't lived any of it. It's not like he has lived long enough to become jaded and, yeah, you can have my life. I don't want it either.
Well,
So,
do you think it's possible, though, that since the boy was very young, that he retained some memories of where he was before he came here? People describe, well, you've got different versions of heaven, for instance. You have the Judeo Christian heaven, you have the Elysian fields, you have even Valhalla. So maybe we start in heaven
yeah.
and come to earth. And maybe this child had remembered heaven. And I said, no, this is bad. This is terrible. I want to go back. Do you think that's a possibility?
I mean, maybe. Um, because I mean, a lot of children report like their past lives and stuff, so that tells me that like you know they have this life, take a little break, come back, take a little break, that kind of thing.
Mm,
So maybe he just decided his break wasn't long enough and wanted to go back.
possibly, possibly. And then if you, of course, if you subscribe to the belief in intelligent design and ordered universe, um, maybe it was part of the plan. Who knew?
Maybe.
So um, I often thought that I've heard reports before of people, for instance, there's one of a gentleman that was struck by lightning and it killed him, but he was revived. And when he was revived, he also learned to play the piano.
Maybe piano is just something they teach in heaven.
Or
All these people coming back to life and be like, oh yeah, I remember how to play piano now.
maybe they're just doing this to make me angry because I
Yeah.
can't play the piano. And this is the funny thing too. I'll throw this in here. My wife plays the piano. Okay. And I will rat my daughter out here too. She took piano classes when she was a young child. And her teacher comes up to me one day and she says, you know, Samantha would be so great at the piano if she would practice just a little bit more. I'm like, yeah, I'll tell her that. But what I'm thinking in the back of my head was if she would practice at all, the only practice she ever did with anything was at the piano class. So yeah, uh, I'm a little salty about that. But at any rate,
I guess you
so
need to almost die again.
oh no, I've done that. I've been there, done that. Couldn't afford the T-shirt because I may not play the piano, but my ears still work, so I can listen to Billy Joel and Elton John. And I know I'm giving most people dust-covered references here. Okay, but a lot like the shadows and the legends themselves, the older ones are often the best ones. I even like some Floyd Kramer and Liberace. But I do have to say, the lady at church that was playing the piano, and she got really into it, and she kicks off her shoes and she's stomping the pedals. I'm like, you know, she could have been a rock star if she wasn't a church pianist. But at any rate, so we've staggered away from walk-in spirits.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the interesting thing to me, uh, ancient people have always been concerned that somehow their soul would be taken over or it would be ripped from their body. I mean, even something as innocuous as saying, God bless you. Well, that was a hope that God blesses you enough so your soul goes back into your body after you just blew it all over your cousin at the church picnic. So they were really concerned about this. I mean, and all these spirits that can come in, of course, you have the infernal spirits, and that's possession, of course, and that's a strictly involuntary thing. But this is one of these ways that they used, one of their legends they used to explain how people could become so radically different from what they were. Uh, in interest of full disclosure, when I woke up and got out of the hospital, I was still the pleasantly obnoxious person that I always was before and continue to be today. There's no major changes, and I didn't, as I said, still salty about the piano thing. I didn't master long division in those 16 hours either. So
It's a shame.
it
Wasted.
is, yeah. It's another thing too. I'm my wife and daughter both are really good at math, and I'm just really not. But any rate, so let's go back to these stories that we've shared. Now, obviously, my story, I shared that with you, and it really did happen. I didn't make that up. But as far as the stories we've read, what are your thoughts on these, Sam? Which ones do you think are true?
Let me see. So let's see. The little boy. I mean, maybe because it does seem like kids end up like talking about like their past lives and stuff a lot. And so a little kid talking about being married and, you know, with kids and dying at a wedding and stuff. That seems kind of normal at this point.
Well, there's a lot of information there that a 3-year-old probably wouldn't have.
Yeah.
Okay. So that story was true. The little boy was named, I think it's pronounced Jazbeer, and the name of the walk in man was Sobo Ram. It happened in spring of 1959. So, what about the hoarder lady? Do you think that there was a walk in spirit that made her collect empty Big Mac cartons?
I mean, I feel like if she would have been possessed by a little boy, she probably wouldn't have stayed with the. Well, I guess possessed is a bad word for it, but if she had been taken over by a little boy, she probably wouldn't have stayed with her boyfriend. Because he probably would have thought that was icky. Uh, so I'm gonna say that one's false.
Okay, that one actually is true.
No.
It happened to a lady named Janet in California in the early 2000s. So now, the one about the secretary pianist, where she has a near death experience and then suddenly she has that talent and becomes a world class pianist.
Too convenient. Too many people learn how to play piano after dying.
So you say you're going to say that one's false?
Yep.
Is that your final answer?
Oh god. Well, the other two were true.
My best
So
just filled.
So I feel like there has to be one false one.
Well, in this case, you're right. This is a story that was totally fabricated by my wife. And good story, though. And it would, actually, it would hold water if we hadn't made so much a big production of pianos.
Everybody learns how to play piano after dying.
Yeah.
It's just a prerequisite. Or I guess a post-requisite? I don't know.
Well, it depends upon how you want to look at it, I guess. I'm going to dig out my spare coffee here. So, why do you think this happens? Because there's a reason for everything, even if it's a reason that's not readily apparent.
I feel like it's kind of like a haunting, you know? When they feel like something that should have happened didn't. Like they didn't get their closure, they're still wondering. But like the people that have found their closure, you know, or that just don't want to stay, you know, alive, you know, they kind of just switch places because then they can have their closure. You know what I mean?
Well, I thought about this. And since it is a voluntary thing, it's by agreement. I wonder if it's not necessarily a new spirit, but it's a version of your spirit, like you said, the multiversal thing. Only I was thinking more along the lines of time.
Well, I mean, there's a theory that everybody from Mother Teresa to Hitler are all you.
Okay.
And so every good thing and every bad thing that has ever happened in the world has been caused by you. So, like, by this theory, we are the same person, but we're just different lifetimes of that same person.
Okay.
So, like, the whole theory is that you have to go through all the lives that you could possibly have before you can move on to, you know, like a nirvana heaven kind of thing.
Which, yeah, it does make a really good argument for reincarnation. Now, there are a lot of different cultures believe in reincarnation. And you could be reincarnated as everything from a worm to, I don't know, in some cultures, a dragon, which would be kind of cool, except people would always be hunting you. Uh, but and maybe you are given the opportunity to get it right.
Yeah.
And if you consider, we're linear creatures, okay?
Hmm.
At least in this physical existence, we have a beginning, a middle, and an end, like a really good story. But the thought, and there's a philosophy that everything is kind of like what you said, happening all at once.
Hmm.
So what we're actually seeing right now isn't really reality; it's just a facet of reality. So yeah, it's possible.
And I think too, like, I feel like there's always the option or like the idea here that, maybe once you die, you're kind of confused, so you just go into a body if it's available. I mean, like,
See, that's a
if
possibility too.
like you weren't really meant to die, then if you try to go back to your body, maybe you just go to the wrong body because that would be two bodies there at the exact same time. Like the little boy and the adult man.
Mm-hmm.
There'd be two bodies at the same exact time, and that's assuming that we're only gonna say that there was two bodies. I mean,
Uh,
you know, thousands of people die at the exact same time every single day.
well, it's
So
true. There's that people are always being born and dying.
that, and I mean, I feel like that would also lend itself to, um, like when kids talk about their past lives and stuff. If they weren't ready to move on, and there's this new baby
Uh,
that's about to be born, then
mm,
it just slips right in there and takes over that.
that's a distinct possibility. I mean, within that frame of reference. Now, uh, when you're discussing things like that, when you say, okay, that's a possibility, well, that possibility, as I said, is predicated on that particular set of circumstances
Mm-hmm.
and belief systems. It's like, well, for instance, if you are, I guess you could say, an atheist, for instance, and you don't believe in anything other than the physical existence, then this entire discussion is really pointless because we're talking about things that don't and can't exist. If, on the other hand, you're a spiritual person,
Mm-hmm.
then what you're discussing is philosophy that might be applicable.
Yeah.
And there's so many things that we don't know. One of the best ways I heard this described, and they were actually talking about a wizard, wizards back in the past, right? So if from and I've got a bunch of them here behind me, the Time Life come out with this wonderful series, uh, the I guess the Enchanted World and stuff like that. And the writer of that particular volume said that so many times we look into the past, and it's like looking through the wrong end of a telescope,
Mm-hmm.
and all the important stuff is happening outside of our field of vision. So we have to understand and be aware that all these things that we're discussing, we're wading through it. We're walking through shadows, and we're sifting through uh, the clutter of time, I guess you could say, and try to find the the gems of truth in all this. What did these ancient people believe? And this carries forward to the present too. I have on a podcast, Shadows of Legend, people share amazing encounters all the time. So it's interesting to discuss this with them and try to determine exactly what happened so we can gain a better understanding. Now, one of the things about the description at the beginning of the episode,
Mm-hmm.
what are your thoughts on the braiding of spirits? I mean, it goes beyond what you said. Maybe we're all the same person, but what about the braiding of two different spirits?
I feel like they would have to be connected in some way. Like they would have to have some similarity that because it would almost be like a friend that's always in your head.
Well, yeah,
And you know you wouldn't want somebody that was completely different than you and negative and stuff like that inside of you.
well, that's true. Yeah,
So
But that on that subject, that could explain uh, uh, split personalities. It could the mental study of schizophrenia and things like that. So it's possible.
Yeah. Because I mean, we don't really know why that happens.
No, we
You
don't.
know, there's a lot of things like about the human body that we just don't understand yet, and a lot of it is our like mind and soul.
Right.
So I feel like I don't know. It could be caused by anything. Like I know that somebody would be like, oh well, it's actually this gene, and but why do we have that gene? Like why was that ever a thing?
Well, yeah, maybe we were. Maybe it was in preparation for that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like the gentleman I mentioned earlier that got struck by lightning. I mean, I think he was in his 30s when this happened. So he wasn't a young man. So maybe he possessed a certain gene or whatever that allowed him to, I don't know, accommodate that much voltage. And maybe he had a walking spirit or a braided spirit. So, and I think about uh, when psychics discuss that, oh, there's another soul attached to you, and I'm not saying that flippantly, but when they perceive that, well, maybe that is because that person actually has a walk-in spirit.
Yeah.
Now, which one of these do you think makes sense, or rather, more sense, rather? Uh, a braided spirit, or like some other spirit steps in to help you through that traumatic time and just stays, or the fact that you say, okay, I'm tired of this crap. I'm checking out. Room's paid for. Knock yourself out.
Honestly, I feel like either one of them could be, you know, plausible because, you know, a lot of people decide they're just done. Like,
Mm-hmm.
Suicide, especially like, and then you hear about people that come back from that and suddenly they're a Sunday school teacher and, they're all happy and stuff. And like, it makes you wonder, like, something happened there? Like,
Well, yeah, I mean, you would think
you
that.
know, which I understand, like, that's a huge trauma. And, like,
Oh, yeah.
obviously you're going to change after trauma. But it does make you wonder if there's something more there. But then also, like, you know, guardian angels and stuff like that, how do you know that there's not, like, just guardian spirits that, when you have trauma and you have, like, a bad time, they don't come in and, like, hey, I'll help you get through this. And then, they get fond of you and just stick around.
Well, you mentioned that made me think. Uh, a lot of people who are into reading tarot cards and mediumship, things like that, they talk about their spirit guides. And I had an interesting discussion with Wes Forsyth, the media director for the Scarefest. And he was talking about that. He said, well, he said, you have these spirit guides, and they're there to help you. He said, and who knows, maybe later you will become someone else's spirit guide. So if you look at it from that standpoint, then all of this stuff about the walk-ins kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Because maybe, well, I don't know. We'll just say I'm a big fan of the show Ghost. Maybe Thorfinn actually says, okay, I'll be his guardian spirit this time. I'll be your spirit guide. But next time, no, this has hit the fan. I need to step in and take care of it. So you never know. Uh, the possibilities are, well, they're endless. And every situation, I would say, is a little bit different. But it's interesting to me, unlike possession and things of that nature, that it has to be voluntary.
Yeah. I have to wonder, like, at what level it's voluntary. If it's just like, I'm done, whoever wants this body, go for it. Or if it's, I think you're the best soul for my body, you take it over. I have to wonder, like, how much thought goes into it, or if it's just happens.
Well, see, I mean, I don't really know. I mean, that's an interesting question because you would think, as I said before, I'm stubborn. I would just keep beating my head against the wall long after I should have stopped it, but that's just my personality. But you've got to wonder how disgusted and how terrible a life would a person have to where they would just say, okay, if I can check out, let me. And as you said, whoever wants it, take it.
Yeah, but I mean, maybe it's not even necessarily that the life is just that bad. Maybe what is beyond the life is just that good. Like you were saying earlier, like, if the kid remembers heaven, maybe it would rather be there because, I mean, there's no pain, no suffering, all
Yeah,
sunshine and roses.
absolutely.
So, I mean, I feel like that would have to be better than any life.
Well, you would think it would,
So,
yes. But maybe as we discussed, maybe the kid remembered it. Now I'll be 62 this year. I don't remember being in heaven if I was ever there.
mm,
I understand certain things on faith and certain things on theory or reverse engineering, however you want to talk about it. But all I really truly know for certain is the life I've lived. And I know what's good and what has been good and what has been bad and what has been just, existence. So I wouldn't have anything to judge it against. Now, uh, as I said, with my experience, I didn't see, pitchforks or harps, but if possibly I had been on death's door and saw heaven, this beautiful place that was eternal sunshine, maybe I would have just went ahead and gone and said, okay, it's up for grabs, guys.
but maybe, you were never supposed to die at that time. You know what I mean? I feel like there's that too. You know, the people that come back and, they're themselves after a near death experience, like, obviously that wasn't their time.
Right,
Because everybody has a time that's going to be your final moment.
right.
But, I feel like maybe that one just wasn't their time. So, maybe they didn't see anything that would tempt them to go
It's possible, yes.
because, you know, a force is telling them, hey, no, you're not supposed to leave yet.
Well,
Whether, you know.
my father, your grandfather,
Mm-hmm.
the uh, much emulated but never duplicated Frankie, he believed that you weren't going to go till your time came.
Mm-hmm.
But when your time came, you were going to go. Now, I seemed bound and determined to prove that.
Mm-hmm.
I've been in several horrible instances. I flipped my car, and your Uncle Ernie was following me.
Mm-hmm.
He said he came around the curve and saw this cloud of dust in my car rolling over into a ditch. He just knew I was dead.
Mm-hmm.
So he swerves off the road and pulls into this guy's driveway, and the guy heard the crash, and he comes running out of his house, almost hit the guy in his own driveway.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, "My brother," and then I come crawling up out of the ditch, and Ernie's just like, "Born under a lucky star, I reckon." And I get about halfway out of the ditch, like, "Crap!" He said, "What's wrong?" I said, "I forgot my cigarettes." So I crawled back in the wrecked car to get my cigarettes because I am, in fact, stupid.
I wasn't going to say anything.
So, but now I say this because the only thing, and now it was a horrible wreck. I literally rolled the car two or three times. It landed in the perfect way. The front end landed in the ditch. The rear end ended on this guy's bridge. It crushed the trunk and crushed the hood. Didn't break a glass in the car. And the only ill effects I got from that, I got a carpet burn on my forehead because I ended up under the dashboard. Now, sadly, the following winter, this lady they had called school off because of snow, and she went to pick her child that was going to get her, and was forced off the road in the exact same spot by a semi, and she died. And just totally, completely tragic. And all you can say is that perhaps it was her time to go, and it just wasn't mine.
I feel like that's a lot of near death experiences. Like, it just wasn't their time, so no matter what, they were not going to go. Whether, you know, every bone in their body's broken and everything, like, well, sorry, you got to figure that one out, but not your time to go, so you got to stay.
I remember my friend Clinton, his mom was telling me a story about her youngest son, Clinton's brother, was in an accident. He was in a body cast, and it was just really miserable. And she would take like a hair dryer on the no heat setting and blow down into the cast trying to cool him off because it was just so miserable.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, "Well, life broke it. Life will fix it." And he went on, grew up healthy, uh, no lasting trauma from it. But and you hear of silly things happening, and the tragedy of it all. And on the subject of back to the subject of walk-in spirits here, there really isn't any caution I can give you. I mean, and if you want to talk about a nefarious entity, you can say, well, don't open doors you can't close. But the, although it is a supernatural event, walk-in spirits it seem to be voluntary. So all you can do is say no. It's like Bob the Spirit floats by and says, "Hey, you using that?" Well, yeah, I'm kind of busy here. So Bob just floats on and looks for the next, uh, perhaps more receptive individual. But it is an interesting thing that people believed happened. And that's how they explained radical changes in personalities. Now, is it true? Did it happen? I don't really know. And there's very little way you can prove it, but there are documented cases. Well, it's like these stories, two of those were actually recorded and reported on. And this uh, kid gave a 3-year old, and this was long before, the uh, prolificacy, we'll say, of the internet. And yeah, he should not have known that information. His parents didn't know the information. So it's not like they were sitting around discussing it like, hey, this guy went to a wedding and somebody poisoned him and he died. So it's not like the kid picked that up. There's no real way the kid should have known that. So it kind of indicates that there was some sort of supernatural agency involved. Okay.
I feel like it's kind of I don't know how to explain. Just I feel like it's kind of problematic.
Mm-hmm.
In that, you know, how do we know that it was voluntary if nobody's come back from it?
Well, okay.
That's my big worry. Because, obviously we're seeing the person that is taken over when we get their opinion. But like, what is that movie? It's a new movie, with Keanu Reeves, and he's like the angel, and he switches the two guys' bodies. Well, one of them was very into it, and the other one was very not into it.
Yeah.
So, like, how do we know that the person that's not there anymore was actually into the idea if they're not there to be like, oh yeah, dudes,
See,
I was fine with that.
Now that type of suspicion beyond the family resemblance should point out that yes, she definitely is my kid because I just trust everything. Mm-hmm. Or I guess really it should be trust but verify. Okay, because you don't really know. It's just like history in general. The winners write history. Mm-hmm. So you really, unless it was passed down in your family line for generations, it's kind of suspect. And it's one of the things.
Even that in your family line,
oh my God, yeah.
It's like the fish. Fish started out this big, and then it's like, woo.
That's right. Yeah, my family has this tendency to exaggerate. Uh, so yeah, that's yeah, a bit problematic. But you never really know.
Yeah.
And I guess my thought, my way of going about it would be uh, just lock down and say no, 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 we're not having any of it. You know, all of you spirit guys, just keep moving along. No birth here. No room. No empty rooms that I'm willing to lease out. Put it that way.
Yeah.
I mean, I might not be using them that well, but I am using them. So
I don't know. That just kind of scares me. The thought of being forced out of my own body. You know.
well, see, ancient people were terrified of that because the world was a big, scary place. We have artificially shrank the world.
Mm.
We still don't understand most of it, but we've convinced ourselves that we do so we can sleep at night. It's just like most people understand that gravity works. A large number of those people couldn't explain to you how.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that they're stupid, it just means they don't know. And it's problematic to uh, put a lot of stock in this, and I wouldn't be out there inviting spirits to come in, on a regular basis.
Yeah.
That's one of the problems I have with Ouija boards. 99% of the time, they're just a piece of cardboard or plastic, and they're a kid's toy. It's that 1% of the time. 1%. When it happens, that becomes 100%. And you're opening doors you can't see. So there's no guarantee that you've locked them because you can't see them closed.
Yeah.
So, so yeah, it pays to have a healthy amount of suspicion of everything. But it would be a pleasant thing and almost comforting thing that, for instance, that your existence could go on to comfort the people that you love and
Mm.
be a help to them, even if your soul decided that it was time to bow out.
Yeah. That is true.
So, but people have been wrestling with these concepts and these legends for centuries, and I don't really suspect we'll solve all of it uh, tonight or even next Wednesday.
Yeah.
But we have to examine it because if nothing else, even if you can't find the answer, it's important to ask the questions
Yeah.
because asking the questions keep you honest. And who knows?
Yeah.
So, so what would you tell people about this sort of spiritual interaction? What kind of thought would you want to pass on to other people that possibly know less about it than you do?
Well, hey, dude, you might be able to play piano because apparently ghosts really like piano.
Yes, you too can play piano. All you need is 5 million volts of electricity.
Uh, I don't know. I guess just that you never really know what the spirit wants. You never really know what your spirit wants, though. Um, because, whenever you're given the opportunity, you know, whether you think that you would want to stay or not, you might decide otherwise.
That's
And
a good point because nowhere in any of these legends about these that I've ever read is there any accounts of like, oh, well, 6 months later, I said, yeah, I want my body back. Uh,
I mean,
your lease is up. You got to be out by midnight. Uh, that's
maybe
not recorded.
maybe only one spirit can be in the body though, and you know, once that spirit takes over, you're kind of screwed whether you want it back or not.
Right. Yeah.
You know, you might just be haunting instead of actually having a body.
Yeah. Regret. See now, honestly, this kind of plays into another uh, the whole thing about traumatic death and things like that, and unfinished business plays into another supernatural series of legends, actually, about revenants. And of course, that wanders into the realm of the undead and things of that nature, which we'll discuss at some point. Uh, but because I like to talk about all the stuff, well, it's fascinating what people believed and even just what people questioned. So, but
Oh,
oh,
we have a comment. It's your wife again.
a,
No, I read an account where a guy changed his mind.
did you? Okay, well, now that I had not read that.
That's kind of
That
interesting.
is interesting.
Beyond of like forced a spirit out of your body
Well, you
so
know,
you can
could
have back.
I guess it could be like I own this house. I could decide to move somewhere else and lease it, and then tell them, okay, your lease is up. Oh, I want my house back.
Yeah.
So it's possible.
I have to wonder though, like let's say it's somebody that did magically learn how to play piano. I wonder if the muscle memory would stay, so you could still play the piano. You just don't know how you can play the piano. Yeah, and that kind of thing. Like because I mean, muscle memory. Like think about the people that work in factories and stuff. They could do that stuff in their sleep because they're so used to doing the same
Right.
repetitive
Yes.
motions. So if you like play the piano so much, you have that muscle memory. So I wonder if you would like keep that.
So I don't know. You know, numerous times over the years. Of course, you know the whole history. I grew up in Frankie's garage and painting cars and rebuilding motors and things of that nature. And over the years, there's times I've just quit doing it and moved on to something else and then went back to it. And I made the joke, oh, well, can I remember how to do this? And the truth of it is, I'd never forgotten how to do any of it.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, when you were really little and I had the one shop and I worked nights, I would literally fall asleep sanding Bondo and wake up and it'd be done right. So my brain, who knows where it went, but the body's just like, okay, we got to do this stuff, Bozo's checked out. We got to keep going, because we don't want to be here till 4 o'clock in the morning. So, uh, so yeah, there's a precedent for that. Now, uh, your Uncle Ernie can play the guitar.
Mm-hmm.
I never learned to play the guitar. And obviously, I've complained enough. I never learned to play the piano. I think what it is, my entire family has rhythm until they think about having rhythm. And then once they think about it, they don't have it anymore. Mm-hmm. So, possibly in a very real way, we can't get out of our own way.
Yeah.
And I would like to think that if a subject of a walk in would come around and say, oh, that one's vacant. Nah, he's an idiot. I don't want anywhere near that body. Yeah, because this guy changes his mind 5 times between the living room and the kitchen. Yeah, gets up for a cup of coffee and comes back with 3 cheeseburgers and a bucket of fries.
Yeah.
I have done that, but who knows? And maybe the reason that there can be changes is that each of us are working through something. We're learning, we're improving, we're picking up good habits, hopefully and dropping bad habits. Mm-hmm. And maybe, like in the case of the 3-year-old, for instance, maybe he just needed to get rid of that last little bit. Then he was done. Okay, I've hit my saturation point. I'm good now. So next, anybody need a body?
But it did say that he went back to eating with his family and stuff after a few months. So maybe that spirit was only in his body long enough to
well,
get it out and then
possibly. But then of course there's like my dad hated pumpkin pie. Mm. If that was all he had to eat, he'd eat pumpkin pie. Yeah. So eventually, the body hunger takes over. And that's why it's hard to diet because nope, not going to eat anything. And then, snacks.
Yeah.
So that might have just been attrition. And, you can only turn your nose up at a bologna sandwich so long before then you realize, that's all right. You put some cheese and Miracle Whip on it. That thing kind of tasty. At any rate, I think we have hit our limit for this episode. Thank you all, and following us in our shambling way, or I guess my shambling way, through the shadows, trying to discover why people believed what they believed and how they impact us in the modern world in our day-to-day lives. So until next time, keep looking through the shadows, keep asking questions, and hopefully together we can find some answers. Thank you for being our companion on this week's walk through the shadows. Join us next week when we will share more stories of the paranormal. Until then. This quiet path is all I